ancient religions, we always got to start with the first one, which is the Sumerians. What do you know about them?
Well, I know little bits and pieces about Sumerians, mostly more with Egypt and all that sort of stuff. But I do
Right.
like some of the early folklore with the Sumerians because so much of the religions around the world have adapted from it, especially with the whole dragon god that goes into South America or across the world, really. There was even in
Right.
ancient Africa, they had a giant serpent god called Beta, and they would use
Yep.
sacrifices to it. And also, the Aboriginals had the rainbow serpent. So,
Hmm.
early adaptations all pretty much lead back to Sumeria, basically. But I also noticed one big thing was I've noticed with every early religion, and this also goes back to, with the advanced civilizations with remembrance, and that is ancestor worship.
Hmm.
And many early, especially tribal religions, have this form of ancestor worship. So when you look at these big archaeological remains that we find, they've taken many generations of building. So it's not just one generation of people, it's their families and families. So I see them being held in high regard, and eventually they would be, say, worshipped as gods.
Hmm.
And I think that's sort of how that led up. But I also think that goes into earlier civilizations that were kind of passed on their knowledge that was eventually sort of held in higher regards and led into religion,
Right.
also
Right.
uses of psychedelics. But I'm
Yeah.
sure that you actually know these civilizations like by name. I'm terrible with that sort of side, but you know a few places most that you speak about as well.
Well, so yeah, the reason why I asked that is because everybody that every time I talk to somebody about a civilization, there's always a different meaning for it or a different criteria for civilization. Like some people consider the first civilization because they may have made some a group of people may have had a writing system, or it could be because a pyramid or a building or something like that, or it could be pottery, or it could be all three top. From whenever the word civilization is involved with anything, it's always depending on, the writing system or buildings or whatnot. And most people consider Sumerians the first civilization, but through my research, the Ubadians and the Sumerians and the Acadians, it seems like they were all intermingled. And then,
Mm.
people, the surrounding people around them. So that's the only reason why I asked early civilization and religions. And let's go with religion. The origins of religion, from my understanding, is the origins of religion may have, or some people consider it to be, when burying people for the first time was considered a religion. Showing that there's an afterlife or something, taking preserving somebody's vessel, their body or something on earth or whatever. So that's why I asked them that question, because that's kind of interesting, because we know today uh, Hinduism is the oldest religion practiced today. Not saying that it's the oldest religion at all out of them all.
I
It's
hear
just the
you.
oldest one, practiced. So yeah, yeah, that's why, man, you got good two subjects, man. I gotta hear some of the stuff. But what's your idea? What's your idea of
Well,
religion? Like the
actually, what I
beginning
say
of
about the Hindu thing, heavy rain at the moment. Um,
it.
some people actually debate that it's Zoroastrian
Yeah.
as well. So that's
Mhm.
up for debate with whichever. I don't particularly know whichever, but
Right.
to each their own. But yeah, I see a lot of stuff going back to the ancestor worship, and as you mentioned with the first form of afterlife, I also see with the very first belief was they also believed in reincarnation. So they sort of
Mhm.
seen the cycle, and they seen the afterlife more as like a spirit realm in a sense. And even with the talk of, say, New Age talk now, they talk about dimensions. That first started
Right.
off as densities. And that was the first talk was densities. And they would sort of see, which is a difference to dimensions. So densities can also be in liquid, solids, gases, thickness, and etc. But they also seen it as levels in a sense. So a spiritual sort of sense, like they seen that linked up with your dreams, and they sort of seen that all goes back with the mind.
Right.
And even the circle and dot, the circumput, that's the oldest symbol in the world. That goes back even to Greece, where it became known as the monad, the single mind, or
Okay.
mind of creation in a sense.
Hmm.
So in a sense, this leading back with the ancestor worship, this goes back to seeing them all as one. So the spirit realm, this realm, and a duality in a sense, which later got shifted into dualities of gods. But this also carried in with dualities of nature. So the world around them really shifted their sights. And when I mentioned about the other religion with the giant snake god, one thing I actually didn't mind about their religion was that their religion was open up for change. So
Hmm.
they didn't mind if you wrote something down, but they said don't follow it because it can lead to war because it's religious dogma. So everything should be open up for change depending on the views of society or the world around
Right.
them. And that's quite interesting. And that was a West African religion that goes back BC times, maybe even second century AD around then. But African religions, there's so many of them, and most of them have been forgotten and lost to time mostly. But yeah,
I definitely gotta look that up. And that's interesting you say gods and stuff like that because going back to religion with Hinduism, there's, they practice multi worshiping multiple gods. There's multiple gods in their
yes,
religion, and but in Christianity you got monotheism, which is just one God. I believe I said that correctly. But yeah, it's one God
yes.
worshiping of one God.
Very what form of Christianity as well. If you go back to ancient Christianity, some
Yeah.
believe there was a good God and a bad God.
But see,
You know.
this is the thing, and I believe it's Constantine. I want to say it's Constantine when he seen the cross in the sky
Yeah,
during a battle, and that's what converted him and his people, because not everybody did it, but the people that worshipped him and believed in him converted to Christianity. That was that moment when they went from worshiping multiple gods to one god. But what's interesting is that you got monotry, I believe that's how you say it, is the worship of one god without denial of existence of other gods. And that's what I
yeah,
see Christianity more of. But most people would argue up and down that they're not monotry, but they're monotheism, and they believe only in one God. But in the Bible itself, it does talk about
absolutely.
that there are multiple gods. And
I love how you mentioned
then
that, man, because that's exactly right. That's how it began before it became the modern sense of monotheistic.
yeah, right. Okay, yeah, see, and it's weird because you know I always wondered this: if there is one true God, okay, if there is, let's just say there is, well, just for the sake of argument, there's only one true God, okay, from the beginning of mankind, okay. What story are we supposed to believe? The first time that they had these interactions thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, or are we supposed to go in the middle of mankind and mankind's history and be like, okay, let's start maybe I don't know 6,000 years ago. Excuse me, 6,000 years ago. You know what I mean? Like we're like I know a lot of people in Christianity they only believe that humanity started or the earth
that
and the
that belief was
creation of.
never there. So it's hard, isn't it?
But see,
It's always been
does it?
multiple gods.
You know, it's there's nothing wrong with religion, first of all. But it seems like there's a problem with the religion in itself because they argue amongst each other about who's the
Yes,
one and true God, and it doesn't make sense because nobody knows who's the one and true God if there is one. And if you go off the text itself, the ancient text itself, the origins of the text itself, you're arguing for nothing.
exactly. Well, I like when Hinduism, they say it's the oldest practiced religion
Right,
today.
right,
That being
right.
said, they have little sources that carry back from earlier sources. And this would be that we're all God. And that was
Yeah,
again with all life itself. So life supporting life. And that's really the first belief. So just a reincarnation cycle never ending. And then from there, it sort of evolved and adapted with spirit guides and animal spirit guides and campfire stories, but also big use of
right, right, right.
psychedelics. But
Yeah,
psychedelics were also used for healing and
yeah,
life, death, healing, love, and all this sort of stuff led into what become religion, but it was more spiritual to begin with first. So there was fighting. It wasn't all just this beautiful Garden of Eden, obviously, like there were wars, but we have found many cases of different humans, like species of humans, living together. So it shows that these societies that were forming were the ones building, doing good things, where the societies that were mostly struggling to survive, fighting over territory, were mostly hunters and gatherers. So it's interesting. So we have these big buildings that people were gathering in. So people were smart then, So it's just like now we live amongst tribal people now, and we have societies more advanced than others. So it's a system that just continues going on, It's a good experience.
See, I'm glad you said that, because hunters and gatherers. See, I read so much that I can't, I don't know how to say this. I remember what I read. I remember exactly what I read. But if somebody was to say, hey, what does this book talk about? It would take me a minute to explain it, because I would have to actually dig for it. Like it's in a file cabinet, and I got to dig for it type thing. And it would take me a minute to process. But if I'm talking to somebody, interacting with somebody like you, and you mentioned something, it automatically, I can pick it out. It's a lot easier for me to talk about. And basically what I'm trying to get to is, you said hunters and gatherers. It's interesting you say that, because you talk about hunters and gatherers. We're talking about earliest religions, and we're talking about civilizations, earlier civilization. Okay, so let's go with that. Hunters and gatherers, okay. From what I understand from my research, hunters and gatherers usually did what they did at the nighttime. Now, from what I understand, your father's Aboriginal Australian, right?
Yeah. Well, he's half Aboriginal and half Scottish, I believe. But yeah.
Okay. See, I didn't know how to say that correctly. I didn't want to offend or anything.
Oh, that's all right. I'm all good.
Yeah. So, correct me if I'm wrong. Most of their hunting, if you're hunting and gathering, would you do that mostly at night, or would you do that during the day?
Well, the Aboriginals themselves mostly went out at day, but they did go at night as well. But depending on the locations of different tribes as well, interactly differently. Like some wouldn't touch magic mushrooms, seeing them as evil spirits, and some did. But other cultures would go hunting at night as well. But it's hard to say with Aboriginals, but they mostly went with daytime because they had their boomerangs and their throwing spears as well. But also
different equipment and stuff, and different time periods for animals to be out.
More animals be out in the daytime searching for water, because it's dry. Right. So yeah, nighttime would be like if they were more picking up smaller prey, but then it's more deadly like for fish. Snakes. So
like fish, yeah. Okay, and the reason why I say that is because here in the United States, the Native Americans, from what I understand, were big on fish, and then ancient Mesopotamia, the Sumerians were big on fish at the time. And I'm not gonna say all Native Americans, but I know from some of the tribes that I read about, they were big on fish. That fish was, the biggest thing that they would eat. And I say that because I'm a fisherman. And the reason why I asked about the hunters and gatherers, and why I want to talk about it, is because fishing here in Georgia in the South, the best time to go fishing is at night. It's catfish is at night. The best time to get any kind of panfish is at night. It's just really good. It's just fish is biting at night more than it is during the daytime. I go fishing during the day. I'll leave my house probably about 4 o'clock, get to the boat ramp probably about 5. I'll get in the water about 5:30, and the sun is still down. I'll get most of my hits within the first hour. Then I will get for the rest of the day. And it's weird because everybody that I talk to, they say the best time to go fishing is at night. They all say, let's go fishing at night. And I'm always trying to prove people wrong. I'm like, I'm going to go during the daytime, during the hottest time, to see, if I could catch the same amount of fish. And it's really a challenge. But my point is that when I wrote it on my website, rebirthoftheword.com, about the first representation of a God was the sun. And the reason why I wrote that was because when humans went from being hunters and gatherers to dipping into agriculture, the sun had to been representation of their God. They had to pray because they're looking up. Every time you look at anything in any kind of ancient text about any kind of religion, they're looking up. When they're taking their mushrooms, smoking their marijuana, or whatever pharmaceuticals, they're on a high mountain looking up. They're meditating. Yep. They're looking up. There's the sky is their heaven. That's what they're looking at. I mean, I know you're in Australia, and I know you see it when you turn when it's nighttime. All the lights are off, and there's the sun is down, and the moon is at the highest point. The stars is out. It's the most beautiful thing in the world. You can just sit out there all day and just watch. And as a little kid, we used to look up into the sky and be like, "Oh man!" When you see a little comet fly by or whatever, you'll be like, "Oh man, make a wish!" Or not a comet,
a shooting star.
Yeah, there you go, shooting star. You're like, "Oh yeah, man, let me make a wish. Let me make a wish." But as a hunter and gatherer, when you're switching from doing some of your stuff at daytime, some of your stuff at night just to survive, depending on where you're at, what location you're at, what kind of prey you have, the sun would be representation of a god. I mean, if you look at some of the earliest gods, they're known as sun gods.
Yeah. Also, comets were also seen as serpents in the sky.
Yeah,
and they were seen as gods too.
Man, we on the same page. You're right, because when the serpents are described is described with a long tail of some sort, right? The long tail is the back tail of a comet. See, a lot of people don't understand it. Because you talked about it earlier, the dragon in the sky, right? Yeah, the dragon in the sky, the serpent, the snake. There's been so many names for it. I can't even remember all the names, but there's so many different names for that. Whatever creature you want to call it, that's in the sky, and it could be just a comet. Yeah, and it could just be a comet, or I don't know what some people will call a shooting star. I mean, that's possible. I mean, I don't understand why people don't think that. But see, and this is what's interesting to me. See, I grew up in the Catholic Church. My mom's German, my dad's African American, and we used to go to the church, and I would sit there and listen to people and stuff like that, and things just wouldn't make sense to me as a little kid. Things just would not add up. Like, how did Adam and Eve had two boys and some girls, or three boys, or the numbers are different. Some of them said they had a lot of sons, and some people said they only had three sons, and the numbers are all over the place. But the point is that Adam and Eve's family were the first and only family on earth. Then I learned about Lilith, and I'm like, yo, that's Lilith was supposed to be Adam's first wife. And I'm like, yo, it changed the whole game. I'm like, yo, why didn't they talk about this in church? And why are they denying this? And why do people say, oh, you're teaching lies and stuff like that? And I'm just like, this is what religion is. This is what our earliest religion views were back then. This is not what I say it is. This is not me telling you that, I'm making it up, or I'm trying to be a jackass or anything. I'm just telling you what the hell
just like the cherry pick.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like, come on, like you say you want the truth. You say you believe what you believe, and then when I say, did you know this? And you're like, no. And I'm like, how would you not know that? Like, if I
100%.
if I was in charge of a church, if I had a church, okay, and I was supposed to be teaching the word. There is things that the Bible is not the only thing you can be, because there's no Bible that's certified as the one and only Bible. I don't think there is.
No, they're all different, and a lot of them have a lot of things censored, and some have the whole thing.
But see, Jesus, according to the scriptures, Jesus studied all other religions also.
Yeah, he did,
and taught them. He brought them into his teachings and taught people these.
He also
things.
praised the Samaritans as well. Sorry, I cut you off, brother.
No, you're right, but that's what I was going to say, because Hinduism. Uh he's supposed a lot of people from what I've read, a lot of scholars and academic scholars and stuff like that would say Jesus is supposed to have been Krishna. Well, Krishna practiced Buddhism. Am I wrong? He
Hinduism or
did
Hinduism.
Hinduism.
Yeah.
Yeah, he practiced. I don't know why I said Buddhism. I'm thinking about Buddha, but he taught. He
Also similar
he's supposed to
messages.
be. Yeah, he possibly. Oh man, I can go all over the place. I gotta slow my brain down because
I
my
have
brain's
heard a Hindu
going
mention
fast.
them before, though. Oh, I do it all the time too, man. I heard one
Not,
mentioned about Krishna being like for a wartime and then Jesus being like the opposite force of the coming in duality. But then I've even heard other people seeing him like Plato, Thoth, and all these people. There was a Gnostic group of Christians that would put
oh
Jesus'
yeah,
image next to philosophers. You know?
man. I want to say the name, but I don't want to mess it up. So I'm not messing it up. But
I think.
uh, you're right. There is somebody out there, and I'll have to go check my books to verify. But I don't to verify who it is. But there is some people out there that believe that Thoth and Jesus is the same. I've read that.
Yep.
I've read that because I was like, what the hell? I was like, how the hell do you get Thoth and Jesus to be the same?
Well, they all had very
And
big similar
but
messages.
see, but see, Thoth is he balances the scales. He weighs your heart in some ideas.
Hmm.
I mean, it gets crazy, man, because religion is all
About
over
that
the
one.
place. Like you can believe one thing and learn one thing and it's totally different somewhere else because somebody else changed it. And if it's not
Yep.
academically accepted, some people will be like, oh, well, you're making up. And you're like, no, this is like these old books, man. Like some of these old books is crazy. Like I was reading a book the other day, or not the other day, about 2 weeks ago, by Andrew George, the Epic of Gilgamesh. You heard about the story, right?
Yep.
Well, in the book, he talks about how the story is fiction. Like he actually says the book is fiction, and don't and it's crazy. He talks about it, and he said, and I have to go back and look at it. But man, I'm telling you, it's crazy because some of the stories that I've read about in religion and stuff like that, the Epic of Gilgamesh, you're like, wow, it's a good story, and it's about a man or a god or whatever you want to call him, depending on how you want to look at him, wanted to stay alive forever and messed it up. Basically messed it up. That's like the earliest parts of religion, and like you talked about earlier about the dragons and serpents and stuff. It's always a snake or a serpent or something that's getting involved, messing up somebody's uh chances to be whatever they wanted to have it to be at the time. It's crazy, man.
I also noticed that a lot of their ancestors, with the way they would build their buildings, would be aligned with the stars. So that also being said, they didn't just know about that, but they also knew about the world moving. And so this is why they would move their temples from different locations to
Mm-hmm.
keep going with the stars, and that way they could see what was going on all the time, in a sense, have the certain light come in a certain position for their holy
Mm-hmm.
temples. And like say Isis would have the moon go into the temples at a certain thing and stuff like that, you know.
Yeah.
But
No.
a lot of those things that were built, sorry, uh,
Mm-hmm.
remains that we have found,
Mm-hmm.
they date back much further if we go by the star signs than what, say, the archaeological people say. And that also makes a lot of sense because a lot of things that we see were merely just built on top of older ruins.
Because a lot of the stuff that I've read is every time there's a holy site of any sort, if it's destroyed, it's the next religion or maybe the same one will rebuild on top of that.
Yep.
And that leads me to another thing, the pyramids. I know some people believe the pyramids were built in 20 years. I don't know how long it takes to build pyramids. I can't even get into an argument of who or how the pyramids were built. I do know that both uh, Egyptian archaeologists and ancient alien theorists both believe humans built the pyramids, but the only difference between the two is one believes in the alien theory and then the other one doesn't. But let me ask you something. This is an argument that I've always been geared towards. Okay, we know that words mean a lot. Okay, I can say a word and you'll know what I mean. If I say car, you'll say, okay, it's a car with for you'll know what a car is. But some people would say car and actually mean a truck or a van or whatever. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's important to understand what words were supposed to mean. But let me ask you, do you think there's a difference between aliens and gods? I mean, they both are not from Earth, according to modern uh,
Well, yes and
ideas of
no as
religion.
well. It depends on what concept of God, gods in general, a whole bunch, or say the God of the Bible. Yeah, pretty much same as the alien sense. But if you go into say a universal mind that is all life itself, that's all of
Mhm.
us, just life is about meaningful experiences, then
Mhm.
no. But again, it
The
depends on the
God here,
concept of
right?
God. Yeah, so that's my
Yeah,
view. Like I think all of
yeah,
us are God, all life itself. It's just
yeah.
everything is an
Not all
experience
life is
of
God.
learning and
All men,
evolution.
yeah,
Yeah,
all men are God. All women are goddesses. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Like
And
you're the
see,
key of your life, you know?
and see, and you're right because we was talking about pharmaceuticals earlier. Um, I know in ancient Egypt they had a scroll for uh, for their pharmaceuticals,
Yes.
mushrooms. There are certain plants and stuff like that. Hinduism. I mean, you can't. It's obvious over there. You know.
Even China.
Yeah,
Well, used
China.
to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, probably not. I mean, see, the thing is we only know what they're telling the modern people like us to do. We know that they're not doing the same thing we're doing. We know that because they can't be in control of what they have without not doing. If that makes sense, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, they're taking those, you know, pharmaceutical uh uh they're indulging in those appetites. We know they
Yeah.
are. I mean, there's no doubt that they can't be. The problem is if the people as a whole started doing it together, it would start waking up a lot of people. See,
Yes.
um for example, um we're sitting here talking, right? It's 4:30 in the morning for me, and it was probably like what eight something in the
Yeah.
morning.
8 o'clock
Yes,
here. PM
yes,
here.
yeah, 8 p.m. Yeah, see, so we're on two different time scales. All right, now check this out. If this was back in the old days, right? We and you would never be sitting here talking.
Yeah.
And before we even started, because I won't get into details about it, before we started, we had our own little ritual of things, right? And most people, they have a ritual for whatever they do. Some people will go pray um, before a basketball game, soccer game, football game, whatever the case may be. Um, some people will sit down and meditate for about 10 minutes before they do something. Everybody has their own ritual, and it goes back to with earliest religions and
Great point.
civilizations. If we go back to the Sumerians, the first civilization, because that's what people say, they say that the Sumerians are the first civilization. I believe that if maybe 10 years ago, but today there's so much evidence that shows that it's not. If we go back to Gobekli and Tepe, you can see their ritual site. From what I understand, some people believe it was a religious site. People from all over came
Yeah.
there and gathered and worshiped together and stuff like that. And the key word is people worship together. Um, Hunters and gatherers, they had their own gods based on what uh, what what was beneficial to them. We get a lot of fish gods. We was talking about fish
Yeah.
gods. A lot of gods are fish gods because they can fish very well. Imagine somebody knowing how to catch fish for a group of 10 people in a matter of a couple of hours rather than having to spend out there all day. You got a constant level of food. Somebody knows how to fish the hell out of water. That they would be considered a god. And then now you got another god that or a goddess that can Because going back to man, see, I love how you be my mind be going so fast. For instance, perfect example, women goddess, the moon, the from what we understand, or from what I understand, I should say, the moon is considered was a goddess. There was a moon goddess from
Yep.
different religions, from different places. There's so many different moon goddesses. But the point is that if you go back to what women in the connection with the moon is that their menstrual cycle comes every certain amount of days based off the cycle of their moon. Like the moon basically uh is connected
Pretty
with their
much.
menstrual. So they would
Gnostics
be
were
the
very big
first,
on that
yeah,
too.
they would be the first ones, for one, to understand mathematics, because that's a natural thing. That's just natural. There's nothing that they have to learn about it. That's natural. I mean, all they got to do is
Yep.
just remember the days and stuff like that. And there's actually, artifacts out there that have that. But uh, the moon god, a woman that knows that the first woman to record it down for other women to learn how to track their times better for themselves, how to look at the moon, how to make sure, like, if you go off track, to make sure this is how, there's certain, like, I can't get into detail that with it, because I'm not a mathematician, plus I don't know the ins and outs, and I'm really bad with math anyway, so I ain't even try to get into it. But the point is that the moon, that would be considered a goddess. That would be
Yep.
somebody considered in a higher uh, echelon than anybody else. That would be somebody. Hey, we should worship this woman, because she's the one that helped us understand how the moon basically moves. And not only that, it goes back to the fishermen. The moon, different phases of moon affects how the fish bite. I mean, if it's a full moon, from what I understand, and I've always been told traditionally, is that when the moon is full, you're going to get a lot more fish biting. And
Yeah, I've
if
heard that
the
one
moon
too.
isn't, yeah, it's just weird that with
I'm glad you
earliest.
mentioned that too, because sorry to cut you off here, but the moon and the sun, they both seem would walk on water.
Mm-hmm,
Goddess and God walking on water.
yeah, because the way it will go, yeah, because the way, if you're looking at it from, from the ocean side, the beach side of you, you would see the the moon going, yeah, depending on where
Yeah,
you're at, yeah. But see, people don't think like that. I mean, and it makes me wonder, because if I'm supposed to believe in a God, and I'm supposed to live by the rules of this God and this religion, I have to know every single one of them. I can't just be like, well, I was told to believe this one, and I got to roll with it, and that's the right one. It could be the wrong one. People make mistakes. Why do I want to spend my hell in an eternity in hell
yeah,
because
exactly.
I
Well,
follow
even early
somebody else?
Christianity, they encouraged you to have meaningful experiences in life, and then the Catholics and Orthodox hated that, and they said that anyone was doing this with doing everything, including eating babies, but they weren't. They were just seeking experiences in life. And early religions, Egypt would encourage this, encourage you to go out and seek knowledge, and a lot of the mystery schools would also practice that. So they would engage exploring arts, philosophy, maths.
But see, that's the thing. People make up so many rumors, and maybe some of them small groups were probably doing that. I mean, we don't know. I mean, there's always that 1% that can mess it up for anybody. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? There's always that one person or one group of people that mess it up for anybody, and that's what people go off of. But my point is that, I started my website, this podcast, reading, and all this stuff is because, one, I truly want to know. I mean, if there's really one God that I need to worship, I need to know. I need to do as much research as I need to find out he or she is. And the reason why is because in all the ancient texts, even in Christianity, if you read the King James version all the way to the New International Version and everything between it, you'll read that it tells you to seek this information out
Yep.
and decide for yourself. It tells you to do this. I mean, in so many different ways. See, if I'd have known that I was going to say this, I'd have had a good slideshow or whatever. But or scriptures and stuff like that. But in so many different ways, it tells you to seek knowledge. I mean, you can go into you can go on the BibleGateway.com. And let me see how I can do it right now. But you can go there, right? And this is what I like about technology.
Beautiful thing.
You can, if you're ever trying to look for something, right? You can just, in many cases, just go search it or whatever, and it'll tell
Yeah.
you, so many different things. So, first of all, when we talk about the Bible, we already know about the tree of knowledge. Okay. So,
Yeah.
that tells you that if you basically, if you eat from the tree of knowledge, you gain certain knowledge that you're not supposed to gain, and then certain things happen to you. But you can go into Bible Gateway and go to any of the Bible versions, King James Version to New International Version, and type in knowledge in the search bar, and it'll tell you everything that it says about how about the Bible, telling you to gain knowledge. I
Yeah.
just did it right now, and it said that it found 169 Bible results for
It
just
was
the
Jesus
word
that mentioned
knowledge.
that too, wasn't it,
Yeah,
Tyrone?
yeah,
I thought so. And
yeah.
that points again to the Gnostic stuff about the knowledge seeking, make up your own mind. And that would be taboo to Christianity, It's like, do what we say.
Yeah.
But
But
yeah.
see, the thing is that in all the ancient texts that I read the, it's all about having knowledge, being aware, gaining being educated, basically. And then the crazy thing is people would say, well, I've heard people say, well, the Bible was written by man, so it can't be right. Okay, got you. I'll go with you on that. And then people would say, well, the history books are written by the same men. And then I'll be like, okay, yeah, I'll go off that. The point is that if you read the Bible, if you read the Bible and you go research the Bible, you'll find so much more information in that Bible. Like it's crazy. Like Enoch, for example. You'll read about Enoch in the Holy Bible, and if you go and type in Enoch, who is Enoch in the Bible, you'll learn about the 3 books of Enoch. You'll read about the books
Yeah.
of Enoch. And it's
That's
a
where you
whole
find out
different.
more's been removed.
Yeah, exactly. So it's crazy because like I said, going back to the earliest religion, um, I believe it was the Neanderthals who they give credit to beginning of religion, because they were the first to bury people. I'm not sure who it was exactly. I shouldn't say Neanderthals, but the point is that they believe that when human species, because it's so confusing. If I say human species and Neanderthals, some people will be like, well, Neanderthals aren't human species, and it's just you got to go through the whole way of learning things. So I'm just gonna say
I
people that
understand.
look like people that look like us. They are once we
I would
started
say the human
burying people.
species.
Yeah, we started burying people, so that's when you add a new layer to religion on new things that you've learned throughout your life. Like say like so for instance, religion was created based on burying people. So what happened? What would you add from burying people? Okay, reincarnation. You bury somebody,
Yeah.
reincarnate them, just like you said earlier. Seed the earth with the body, which will create another.
Also, mother worship. They have a
Yeah.
beautiful sculpture made out of mammoth tooth ivory on the shape of the woman. And they reconstructed it, like not really reconstructed, but show how it would have used to look when they painted it. And it pretty much looked like a person. This was greatly skilledly done for what they call primitive humans. They were intelligent. And when we say Neanderthals buried dead, there were also earlier humans too, like say Denisovans. They also practiced this, or I'm not sure it
Yeah.
was Denisovans, but all these different species of humans were all communicating. Sometimes they fought, sometimes they made a whole new community together. But I see a lot of that leading to the advanced civilizations in a sense. So some humans were a bit more clever than others. Some were living in caves, some were building cities, and some were hunters and gatherers. But the point is, like, this was all amongst us different communities, which is interesting.
Yeah. And see, and you're right, because going back to the Sumerians, the Anunnaki, for example, their gods. I talked about it earlier. You got the ancient alien theories, and then you got the academics, and then you got basically everybody in between. But what are your thoughts about the Anunnaki? Like, what do you think about them?
Well, I also think they go back to earlier beliefs as well. Um, is it Anu or Anku? That's the dragon
Anu,
or the
yeah,
serpent?
and Anu, yeah.
Well, that goes
Well,
back further as well. There's again with the serpent god. So I see this as carry ons. Also, the half animals, half humans. That goes back to the spirit guides. But I also see remembrance, say giants. I also see remembrance of, say, Cro-Magnon man, Neanderthals,
oh yeah,
Denisovans.
Cro-Magnon.
All stories of
Yeah,
retellings and retellings, pretty much
yeah.
forgetting who we are in a sense. But even when you look at, say, Neanderthal DNA and Cro-Magnon man, there is very little DNA of Neanderthals and Cro-Magnon, so they rarely intermingled. A few
Yeah.
did, but
Hmm.
there was cases that these two did a lot of battles together. When I also mentioned about that ivory, the reason I mentioned that as well, some people try to say it's made out of Neanderthal teeth. It's not. It's too big. It's made out of a mammoth bone. But some people also like to say that we were more primitive and we were all fighting. It wasn't that case. We were also sharing and making settlements. So there was a lot of experimentation. So it, depending on, say, the location, the current atmosphere of say catastrophic events can lead to wars, famine, and all that sort of stuff has to be taken into accountability, you know?
Right, right. And the reason why I was asking what you thought about the Anunnaki is because, uh, like I said, the ancient alien theories and all that stuff. But the point is that uh, there's remnants of them everywhere. We talk about Thoth and Jesus being one and the same. Actually, I said that that's just something that I read that I found fascinating. I'm not saying that I believe it or anything, but Thoth and Jesus being one and the same. But Thoth goes back uh to ancient Egypt. And then in Sumer, he's supposedly been, his name was supposed to be Ningazida. I believe that's how you say it, Ninjazida or Ningazida, something like that.
And also
Ningashida.
Trismegistus and all sorts.
Yeah, and Hermes the Thrice. Yeah, he's supposed to be all these people.
Yeah.
But see, the point is that the Sumerian, from what I understand, they're the first ones to write this stuff down. And then you got Inanna, who was supposed to be one of the Anunnaki goddesses. She was supposedly over there in India, and that's where you get representation of the goddess over there with her over there. And it's so weird because, like I said, we keep going back to the earliest civilizations. We go back to the earliest civilizations and the earliest religions. How did we go from what we believed in the beginning to where we're at now? And how can we say where we're at now is the right way? It's like it boggles my mind because it's like this. We get 20 people, right? We line 20 people up. I tell the first person a real quick short story. By the time he gets down to the last person, that short story will change it drastically. Yeah, it's going to have a little bit of everything that I said, and I would be able to know what I'm saying because I'm the one that told that story, so I know how it came out. But then if I ask everybody in the group from the first person to the last one, hey, what is your interpretation of what you thought I said? It's going to be all over the place. And I know this because this is experiments that we've done when we were little kids in schools, because this is what teachers would tell us about. Like some teachers that were very serious about their history teaching, they would tell us, hey, they'd be like, hey, don't believe everything you read in the books. Don't believe everything everybody says because, blah, blah, blah. Things change and people make up stuff as they go. And
Yeah.
they would prove it. They would tell us. I think the teacher name was Mr. Lewis. I can't remember. I want to say his name was Mr. Lewis. But he would do these little experiments with us, and I'd be like, yeah, it would make sense. So if we going from the earliest civilizations and religions, from, I don't know if you want to go hundred thousands of years or millions of years, depending on what timeline you want to go in the human species and what you consider a religion.
Yeah.
From that time frame all the way to today, we are nowhere near what we first believed in.
No. I also see the big change coming from Sumeria was when they've made their religious dogma, they've also brought out money in the form of clay tablets. And I think a lot of that has an impact on religion itself. And the story of anarchy with gold. This is a story of kings with gold, us being their slaves in a sense. So this is also stories, retellings as well. So, and then you have battles of demons or archons, and this again goes back to early material rulers that you would call kings, landlords, and a lot of these people were seen as corrupt. So upper class, lower class, and people looking down on others, and led into this divinity that we see now, in a sense. I see that as not. It's not really so much money's fault. It's just money's a tool. It's just the mindset of humans, in a sense. That is sort of constructed to be what it is now, and to continue to preserve it. So that's why a lot of evidence isn't brought forth, because they want to preserve it.
You know a lot of Gnostic, right?
Yeah, I love all the Gnostic stuff.
Yeah, you know a lot of stuff about Gnostics. Yeah, so what let me ask you, why did you pick that to be your main focus to study?
If one thing that really woke me up, to be honest, I like going for a little bit of thing. I tried to go Christianity to try, and then I found Gnostic stuff, and so I was pretty much went for atheist and become Gnostic. I was like, so it gave me a little bit more pursuit of knowledge and stuff. And I've seen everything connected, because Gnostics were, in a sense, the first ominous, bringing everything in together. So, but there's many forms of Gnostics. Some were religious. The earliest ones weren't. They were just gatherers of knowledge, spiritual knowledge from within.
Right.
Then you had ones that were religious, that believed evil gods, in a sense, made this planet and the real divine's unknowable. And then you had Gnostics that sort of were in between both, ones that were seeking meaningful experiences, and many different groups, And then you had some that were really into alchemy. So
when you say bringing everything together, so Gnostics, like, for example, it's bringing everything, every bit of piece of information out there together. Is that what you mean? That's what a Gnostic person is. That how you say it? Gnostic? I'm Gnostic. So how would you identify that?
I'd say you're a Gnostic because you're in the pursuit of knowledge. That's all it really is. It's a very misused word, but we're all Gnostic and agnostic. So agnostic means you don't know. Gnostic means you know. So it's just a very misused word that was put in place by their opponents. So
because if you let me see, I'm gonna type it in. I knew what it meant, and I know what it is and stuff like that. And when you just type it in Google, it says relating to knowledge, especially esoteric, mystical knowledge. Yeah. See, that's interesting, because like the pursuit of knowledge is the most important thing that I didn't even realize until I'm almost 40 years old. I'm 39 years old, and I just started doing this probably like, I don't know, like maybe 5-6 years ago. I've always been interested, and I always read and did things like that, but I never dug into it like I am now. Like, bro, it's like 4:50 a.m. right now. I'm up. I'm talking to you about this, and I was reading. I get so, my mind just keeps moving, because it does. I can't sleep anyway, so I have a hard time sleeping just because what happened to me. But being over there in Afghanistan or whatnot, so now I just stay up all night. And I used to play video games all the time, but it started giving me, like, I get really bad headaches, so I can't really play video games as much as I used to and enjoy like I used to. So I had to find something else. I remember, bro, I used to sit in my bed, bro, and just sitting there 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours all night, just being mad and pissed because I can't sleep. So eventually one day I just started I don't know what made me, but I just started picking up books and I just started reading. And I actually started with the ancient alien theories because I already know about the religion theories and stuff like that. But since the ancient alien theories was kicking off and stuff like that, and everybody was into that stuff and all that, I kind of started going. I started buying all the books on that first. Of course, it was just Zechariah Sitchin just to see what his ideas were. Then I started taking what he wrote and researching what he has, and now I got so many different Bibles and stuff like that and so many different texts and stuff. And like the reason why I mentioned Zechariah Sitchin is because everybody when you talk about religion, when you talk about early civilizations and all that, no matter who you're talking to, for some odd reason, somebody out the woodworks will be like, "Go read Zechariah Sitchin's book." You'll be like, okay, well, and then you read it and you research it and you start learning more and different things. Like I actually started doing a a weekly series with Dr. Sasha Lesson, one of the people that worked with Zachariah Sitchin. So I started doing podcast interviews with him, like me and you talking. I mean, I have it on my YouTube, so it's pretty cool to get involved with this stuff because my wife always tells me, she says this every time when I find a really really cool hobby that I like. She says once you get into your mind into something, that's it. You're just stuck in, and this is it, man. Like I bought equipment and stuff like that. It took me like almost 3 years to get everything where I was at, and learning about religion. I remember the first time me and you talked, man, we talked so good that it seemed like we was talking for years about this stuff. And we're talking
Yeah,
now and it
man.
seems like years and stuff like that. And it's crazy because you taught me some stuff, man. Like I be watching your videos and they're not long at all. Your YouTube videos are awesome. You get on there,
Cheers, bro.
just go on the YouTube and type in spiritual level of being. That's all you have to type, and man, you got so many videos on there, and they're pretty good and they're interesting because you actually go into depth. And then not only that, you could tell your growth because you could see how you first started and how you started implementing in your sources and stuff like that. I was like, yeah, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool, and it's just cool to see other people doing this stuff.
Yeah, man. I've almost got 300 videos almost now.
Yeah, I
Almost
know. I
300.
see.
So I got jammed heaps, but I also like to do it. Sometimes I like to do it shorter because that way people don't get bored and they can see that. Also, try and encourage them to search for themselves.
Yeah,
But a lot of people that do huge videos, sometimes I do longer ones, but a lot of people get off topic or they're sitting there waiting for all the views. And I don't do too many lives. Unless like I'm with you and we just go straight to it and put it on later. And that's one of the best ways of doing it in a sense, because you're not
yeah,
just out for the views, you're out to share knowledge, and that's one of the greatest gifts. That's why we can talk like we've known each other for years, just because higher minds, like
yeah,
sharing ideas and knowledge, and that's peace and love.
yeah. Definitely, definitely, definitely.